secretaries how to write reports, organizational analysis and strategies, implementation, as well as political management. There is a very rich archival treasure trove of such materials, papers, and media of the ANC Youth League from this era that still need to be studied to write the true history of our time. The investment in political education and training was further characterized by the fine balance between theory and practice, between militancy and discipline. Thus, our communicators such as Eddie Mabitsela, Pax Mankashlana, Annette Griesel, Net Kekana, Thabo Masebe, Nomfanelo Kota, did not only learn about communications in theory, but put it in practice when they founded Horizon and wrote and produced the various media products that explained our programs and positions. This fine balance of theory and practice also saw Masebe and others, when given the task, as we heard earlier, to immortalize the contribution of the 76th generation, made sure that they left the lasting legacy of the Hector Peterson Memorial that we have in Soweto today. Indeed, for the generation of Masebe, no job was too small or too big, too humble or seemingly insignificant to give it their all. Serving for them on the National Working Committee of the ANC Youth League over so many years was exactly that, a committee of work and of implementation. The ANC Youth Leagues of Thabo's generation's presence was felt in every single committee of the ANC and the mass democratic movement. It allowed our generation to learn from the immense skill and knowledge in our movement and to sharpen our own advocacy on behalf of young people in this forum. In the process, we learned the value of shunning short-term popular solutions to complex problems and the importance of identifying and seizing important moments to achieve progress and move our struggle towards a higher level. It was a generation that were not scared to break new ground, to venture into uncharted territories because of the culture of rigorous debate in the Youth League. We all thought that the late Comrade Derek Masuk was a bit crazy when he proposed to convene, and this was early 1991-92, a conference of the then dreaded South African police in Soweto before 1994. But out of this initiative emerged the concept of community policing, still a cornerstone of our approach to safety and security today. Or even earlier when Masebe and others argued that it's time for us to sit down with the IFP Youth Brigade in order to ensure ending the violence and lasting peace in KZN and Gauteng. This generation of young lions were not only patriots who fought for their country. At various points, they, including Masebe, were sent to represent South African youth at international events. They did so with distinction by immersing themselves in the process of understanding the situation of other struggling people, the balance of global forces, our position on non-alignment, unity of the South, Pan-Africanism, building lasting comradeship and friendship. These characteristics of the generation of young lions are encapsulated in the motto of the Youth League of fight, produce, and learn. To fight against apartheid and now against the evils of inequality, poverty, and greed, to produce new generations of activists and agents for change, to produce intellectuals, administrators, scientists, innovators, entrepreneurs, public servants, and representatives, and of course, to learn by doing, to learn from others, to learn through self-improvement, through listening, reading, and through engagement. Program Director, fellow mourners, with the advent of democracy in 1994, this well-rounded knowledge and experience gained by this generation found expression in their contributions in many different spheres. They understood that the terrain of struggle had fundamentally changed and that the work of building a national democratic society that is democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous had just begun. Thus, we saw this generation of student and youth activists taking on responsibilities in many, many different spheres of our society, as professionals in the public service, in hospitals, schools, home affairs offices, agencies, as communicators and ambassadors, as public representatives and entrepreneurs, as cultural activists in the security establishment, in the media, in policy think tanks, in the trade union movement, in the sports movement, and in the ANC and its leagues. Thabo Masebe was amongst those serving as spokesperson and senior public servant in provincial and national government levels. They understood their roles as agents of change to implement and advocate for policies in whatever sphere they found themselves that were people-centered, people-driven, gender-sensitive, and for the advancement of a better life for all. Over the last 2 decades, many of them experienced and bemoaned the impact that the sins of incumbency and factionalism had on our movement, and were often marginalized because they refused to become part of slate politics that have become so endemic. At this point, we agree all with Thabo that the progressive and transformation project in South Africa is in serious trouble. That the advances in the deracialization and expanding of public service, of building and maintaining social and economic infrastructure, providing access to basic services to millions, towards women's emancipation in a non-sexist society, towards greater social cohesion, non-racialism, and a sense of common destiny are under serious threat. Key to this is the state of health of our movement, who for the last 110 years have been an integral part of the body politic and fabric of South Africa, the African continent, and of progressive humanity. These are matters that Masebe felt passionate about and would engage with all of us about what needs to be done. Thabo was the first to agree that there are no easy answers, no quick fixes or silver bullets. He agreed that we needed to honestly assess the 20 years of freedom, what we did right, and the mistakes that were committed. He firmly believed that the ideal of a national democratic society, a South Africa that truly belongs to all its people, is a beacon of hope, was not only worth dreaming about, but was worth sacrificing for. Thus, till the very end, he worked and sacrificed for this ideal diligently, meticulously, and consistent. Thabo knew from his experience as a youth and student activist that being an agent for change mattered, but even more important, to be part of a movement for change is what mattered and that what needs to be built. And as we today lay to rest our dear brother, father, uncle, colleague, and comrade, his death should echo as a clarion call. We often talk about a generational mission as if this is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence that you have when you're young. And indeed, each generation of young people must define its mission to either achieve or betray. But Thabo believed, and he was an example, that there's a need for an intergenerational mission to regenerate the ANC, to regenerate its ideology, its revolutionary morality, as well as its state of organization. And when we talk about regenerate, we talk about the regeneration in the language of Pixley Kaseme's famous speak of 1906, a regeneration that contributes ideas for the future and translate it into program and movement, as he called for the South African National Native Conference, and a regeneration which the generations of Lembede, Sisulu, and Thabo, the 1976 generation, and indeed the Young Lions generation, have been able to call forward. This intergenerational mission to regenerate today is so much needed to ensure that South Africa's project of social transformation, envisaged in the Freedom Charter and our democratic constitution, is wrenched back to track. As we therefore honor the memory of Thabo Masebe and the many others who went before him, let us pick up his spear and let the example he set be multiplied. Hamba Kashle Comrade Thabo Masebe, icon of the young lions. Amandla.
Just hold it there. You'll play it immediately after I've called upon a representative of the African National Congress, the former president of the Republic of South Africa, and former deputy president of the African National Congress, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, to come and pay tribute to Comrade Thabo.
The Masebe family, Premier of Gauteng, Comrade David Makura, Program Director, Panyaza Lesufi, ministers here present, MECs, councillors, and other leadership of the Alliance. Our spiritual leaders, Reverend Frank Chikani, our traditional leaders, Hosi Mashau, fellow mourners. It was with great sadness and shock that my wife, Gugu, and I learned about the sudden passing of Comrade Thabo Masebe, with whom we both have had the privilege of working with so closely over the years in various capacities. To his family, we would like to express immense gratitude for sharing Comrade Thabo Masebe with us in his extended family, the African National Congress. Even though we may not fully grasp the gravity of your deep sorrow and loss, we hope that you find solace and comfort in the knowledge that we are here to condole with you. Your loss is our loss. All the tributes since his passing have been a positive reflection, underpinned by profound affection for the memory of Comrade Thabo. I've been asked to add our voice in paying tribute to this distinguished cadre of our organization. As Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. said, and I quote, "When we were young, our hearts were filled with fire. And as life is action and passion, a man must share in the actions and passions of his time at the risk of being judged not to have lived at all," close quote. Like many of his comrades and like all of us, Comrade Thabo is at once a product and a creator of history. Comrade Thabo, though self-effacing, his heart was filled with fire and shared in the actions and passions of his time. He distinguished himself in the role that he played, first as a student and a youth activist in the turbulent 1980s and early 1990s. Comrade Thabo and his generation of youth activists were privileged to have waged relentless struggles against apartheid. In the history of the ANC, we draw lessons from the 1930s, when the ANC was moribund and went through a process of renewal from 1937, which led to the establishment of the ANC Youth League and the ANC Women's League in the 1940s. So the first generation of ANC Youth League leaders were critical of the mother body, however, resolved to join the leadership and to radicalize the organization. And so, at the 35th National Elective Conference in 1949, they were elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Oliver Tambo, who was at the time 32 years old, Walter Sisulu, who was as old as the ANC itself at the age of 37, was elected Secretary General. And then Tlome, who was only 30, was also elected onto the National Executive Committee. At that time, Nelson Mandela was president of the ANC in the Transvaal. This generation of youth leaders, once they were elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC, they benefited from the stalwarts who served together with them, such as J.B. Marks, Moses Kotane, Edwin Thabo Mufutanyana, to name but a few. Thereafter, they remained in harness and at the helm of the struggle until the organization was unbanned in 1990. Similarly, the generation of Comrade Thabo Masebe, the generation of the Young Lions, were privileged to have been in leadership positions of the youth structures when the 1944 youth leaguers were now the stalwarts of the organization. And so, at the time of the revival of the ANC Youth League, Oliver Tambo addressed the conference of this generation. These stalwarts of the 1940s were proud of the Young Lions and saw in the Young Lions a continuation of their own fire and passions, and therefore a sense of mutual respect developed. This alone may be said. The generation of Comrade Thabo Masebe learned from the best and were mentored by the best, and they learned at the knees of the 1944 youth leaguers. This is the historical context that shaped Comrade Thabo Masebe. Comrade Thabo Masebe possessed many qualities that cannot be quickly catalogued, but it was hard not to notice that he was warm-hearted and driven, fueled by his innate sense of empathy, love, and dedication for his people. Along with his concern for his fellow comrades and his belief in justice, these attributes defined much of his conduct and his favor for activism drawing him to the ranks of the liberation movement, affirming his lifelong commitment to the fight against oppression and the ongoing quest to deliver freedom in all its realms to our country. Comrade Thabo, incorruptible in thoughts and deeds, believed with every fiber of his being that the ANC represented the people's greatest hope. Unassuming in his demeanor and consideration for others, Comrade Thabo was appreciated by all for his intellect, hard work, uprightness. He was a straight shooter. He radiated warmth and confidence. These qualities, together with his politeness and the patience to listen to other people, perhaps contributed the most in making him one of the most accomplished political communicators in the democratic era. He worked for both the party and the state in that capacity at the highest level. Comrade Thabo was highly effective in the various roles he occupied, earning him wide praise for his professionalism. Comrade Thabo leaves us at a time when his political home, the African National Congress, and our country are facing unprecedented difficulties, as well as the stubborn issues of poverty, unemployment, land hunger, food insecurity, energy insecurity, crime and corruption, to name a few. We, as his extended family, acknowledge that overcoming these difficulties and achieving the renewal of the organization requires unity of purpose, honesty, integrity, humility, and collective responsibility. Because conceit and complacency are the arch enemies of unity. Our history teaches us that renewal is inseparable from the role of the youth in the organization. As we remember Comrade Thabo and all those young lions that have left us, we can feel their rumble and hear their echo. Through these reverberations, we celebrate our young people today and their dynamic power to innovate and inspire. And we invite them to step back in time with us as we revisit a past scarred by terrible events, but also a past laden with lessons. There are no limits to what young people can achieve and do as we learn from history today. We encourage the youth to connect with that which came before, and we embolden them to roar across the landscape of this great continent to lead us from the front. The best way to train young people is to give them responsibility. Failure to do that is nothing but an excuse. That is the least we can do to honor the memory of Comrade Thabo Masebe. Comrade Thabo Masebe was very special because he understood that muholwane ukanda mufa auchubona. Once again, we pour out our sympathies and compassion for the family, friends, and colleagues of Comrade Thabo Masebe. May his memory live in the hearts of future generations, Long live the undying spirit of Comrade Thabo Masebe. Long live. And I thank you for attention.
Thank you. Thank you, former Deputy President of the African National Congress, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe. Comrades, we also want to acknowledge the presence of various political parties that are here to support us. The IFP, the EFF, ACDP, and other alliance structures that are here. We so wish we had time to also allow these formations to speak so that they can also represent their views about Comrade Thabo Masebe. But unfortunately, we are chasing time, but we acknowledge you are present. We also want to acknowledge the presence of the Premier of Limpopo, Ntate Chukuma Tabata, re a leboga mogolo wa rena, or le re thege, and the entire leadership that is here as well from government. We truly, truly appreciate your presence. We want to move with speed, and apologies to the family that we are now really chasing time. So I'll call upon Comrade Malusi Kikaba, representing that young lion generation, to come and remove the flag of the African National Congress and hand it over to Comrade Deputy Provincial Secretary of the ANC in Gauteng, Comrade Nomantu Nkomora Lehoko, who will hand it over to the children of Comrade Thabo so that we can close this part of our program and then call on Maduva to render a musical item that will introduce Reverend Frank Chikane, who will deliver a sermon. Immediately after Reverend Frank Chikane, we'll then enter the part 4 of our program, which is the official service, and I'll hand over everything to the leadership of the SAPS. Thank you so much, Comrade Nomantu. Let me call upon Maduva, and I hope the musical team is ready.
Remember me, oh my chica. Remember me, oh my chica. Remember God, I come to thee. Bless me now, bless me now, oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. Heal me now, heal me now, oh, heal me now, my wounded soul, my wounded soul. I come to thee. Oh, my ube shalom. Oh, my ube shalom. Kuze kube kuna pagade. Kuze kube kuna paga mabube jalo mabube jalo mabube kuze kuze kube kuna pagade kuze kube kuna pagade ma kube shalom ma kube shalom oh kuze kube kuna pagade kuze kube kuna pagade.
Re a leboha. Ka baka la hobane nako e tsamaile, re tla leka ho e boloka. We'll try our best to save the time. I've already done the greetings and recognitions. I must, though, repeat our condolences to the family again. Former President, I can't not recognize you again, Lemme, the Premier of Gauteng, Limpopo, Re a leboha, and all the dignitaries, officials who are here. If Nekiliko High, I would do it the manner, the way we do it at home. And now because I'm in this place, I will not do it that way. I would like to share with you the word that came out of my interaction with the history Yantate Masebe. I asked myself the question, what can I say in this send-off service of a gallant soldier of the struggle, a cadre of the movement who represents the best of the generation? You heard them talking about it, the best of that generation, which O.R. Thabo called the young lions of our struggle. The young lion who was part of the generation that defined its mission clearly and was not confused And I worked with that generation during those days. The generation that was determined that apartheid will not continue. It must end. A generation which helped us, those of us who were part of the formation of the United Democratic Front, having heard what O.R. Thabo said, I'm sorry to say it in the presence of the police here, so I don't get arrested. We denied that we listened to O.R. Thabo to set up the United Democratic Front in our treason trial. But this generation helped to make the country ungovernable. It actually made it totally ungovernable and created a lot of problems for us at that time because it was difficult to survive the Pietermaritzburg treason trial, even when we tried to defend ourselves, but we had broken so many laws of the apartheid system. We survived, but Delmas did not survive. They ended in prison. The one who, according to the poem in our program, was always on the march, on the straight and narrow, to serve, to suffer, to sacrifice, even when the dark, saturated cloud hang inches above his head. I will not talk about my encounters with him, because time does not allow us. In student politics, in youth Congress formations, in the United Democratic Front, I worked with him closely when the President Kgalema Motlanthe became president there and came with him, and we worked closely with him. In the last few days, I spent more time reading every article that was written about him, and mainly from the generation he comes from. During my reading, I also noticed that his generation recalled his history and life as an epitome of what a cadre of the movement is and should be. That's what they say. The tragedy, though, is that he left us, and I quote from the obituary, concerned and sad about the state of his organization. The organization that he grew up in and became his family until his last breath on earth. He is said to have openly spoken about the divisions within his organization. I'm not talking about the organization today. Having reflected on his life, the Lord put 2 verses of the scriptures in my mind. That's John 5:29 and 35. Verses 29 reads, "Those who have done good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned." I will not talk about the second part because it's difficult. I don't want to condemn people. But the important thing is that those who have done good will rise to live. If you don't believe in life after death, his life and history and practice, his exemplary life lives amongst us. Verses 36-35 says, John was, and where we say John, I will put Thabo, Masebe. John was a lamp that burned and gave light. In other versions, it says he was like a burning, blazing, and shining lamp. That's Thabo, as I read him and lived with him and experienced him. And we have enjoyed, I witnessed this week, that we enjoyed actually, we chose for a time to enjoy his light. All the writings about him, it's about his light. He's a lamp that was burning. It kept burning until the last moment. And we spent time this week to enjoy it. In other versions, it says, you were excited for a time. And the time, it's just for a time. And that's what I want to speak about. And I sit down, just for a time, a while or an hour. I will add for a week for you in this case. You enjoyed his light. I would like to say to you that today, that the scriptures have described this experience as a witness to the people. Masebe was a witness amongst us, spoke amongst us, brings light amongst us, make us enjoy talking about it. But you know, it says just for a while. And I would like, before I sit down, to say, I hope, program director, that this is not just for a while. Because we do this in every funeral. We appreciate and revere the lives of people who have come up before us. And then when we leave, after speaking about how this light has shone amongst us, was shining and burning, we go and do exactly the opposite of what he was. That's the message. If I had a message today, is to say to you, we cannot afford to sit in these funerals, appreciate what people have done, you know, extraordinary people. And then having enjoyed it for a while, this text says, just for a while, I would like to urge you, I'm looking for a better word, urge you that we should not enjoy it just for a while. It must be our way of life. We need to move into the future. We need to move into the future. We can't appreciate the Matambos. We can't appreciate the Mandelas. Talk about them. But then when we leave, we go and do something just the opposite of what we talked about. And so, Masebe has spoken to us. We have enjoyed a moment with him. In Daniel 12:3, and I end, those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. Let us lead our people to the correct path, which will make the promises of liberation a reality. Let us shine like the stars and bring hope to the people of South Africa, especially the poor and the marginalized. My dear comrade Thabo, Maemo Masebe, you're not hearing me now, but your witness has spoken to us. Let your life keep on shining amongst us and give us no peace until we have corrected our ways and lead our people righteously and fulfill the commitment of a better life for all. This is my prayer. And so, God, we pray that you help us against ourselves, that we don't enjoy this moment just for a while, but that it becomes our way of life. And that Masebe's life, which we have talked about, must be at the back of our minds all the time. Remind us when we go astray and when we do the opposite of what he stood for. God, when everything fails, we know you are there for us. And I ask you, for the sake of the people of this country and for the sake of the poor and the marginalized, I pray that you help us to do that which this revolutionary generation stood for. In your name, amen.
Re a leboga moruti. Re a leboga. Le ge ba radi leboga. As we move to part 4, I want to sincerely apologize to the Masebe family. Re shitile ku udisha, re shitile le ku udisha nako. Re kgopela tshwarelo, re tshepa gore re tla re kwešiša, ka ge bona le batho ba bantši ba swanetšeng go bolela. I want to apologize also to those that were scheduled to speak. Because of time pressures, we could not call them to come here. Also apologize to the family of the premier. So when we're introducing the premier, we didn't introduce Mema Kura, Tswarelo Marina. We also want to apologize to the leadership of the church. I know we pressurized you, Muruti, but at least you managed to give us the sermon so beautifully. I've got few announcements to make. We advise that not all of us must go to the graveside. And those that have been identified to go to the graveside, I'm told there is transport that has been allocated to you to utilize that transport. And immediately after the grave service, we are requesting all of you to come back here. Lunch will be served here. I'm also advised that we must leave this place as neat as possible. Those that are in our province, they understand which political party is in charge of this place. We don't want to be accused otherwise when we leave this place. So I'm requested to notify you, please take the bottles, everything that we've utilized, throw it in the bin for peace sake. I want to thank you for your cooperation, your understanding. And once more to Masebe family, Tiang Moyeng, Rea Leboga, Kumuchegang, Kutlaloka. To Comrade Thabo Masebe, go well, big brother. Go well, our loving DG. Go well, Kosi for life. Hopefully that Kosi will do something beautiful for you over the weekend. I now officially hand over everything. And I want to thank the police for that. I'm now handing everything to Reverend Mashiane on behalf of the South African Police Service to take over part 4 re a leboga. Mo re dirileng phošo, re swareleng bana beshu, phošo e sepela le mogatiši. Tshwarelo. Thank you.
I'm now going to request the South African Police Service members to come and wrap the coffin with a national flag. While busy doing that, I'm going to request the band just to play a soft music so that when they are done, then we can proceed with our things.
Thank you, the police, SABC police, the former President of the Republic of South Africa, President Thabo, the Premier of Saudi, Mr. David Makuda, allow me to call upon the criminal authority
to come forward and pay the tribute on behalf of the government of the Republic of South Africa.
You may be seated. Thank you, Reverend Mashiane, the chaplain of the South African Police Service. Motsamaishi wa moshomo o diragetseng MEC Panyaza Lesufi, Muruti, Reverend Chikane, and members of the clergy, ntumeleng ke fetishe tlhompho go ba lelapa la Masebe, go meloko le metswalle, re re paletše ke o diša, dikgomo tša kgoši, dikgomo tša mošate. Ke fetiše tlhompho go Msanda Chiraphara Bafamadi Nda, former President Tate Kgalema Motlanthe and Sis Gugu Motlanthe, our national ministers and deputy ministers present, the Premier of Limpopo, Premier Matabate, the MECs, the mayors, members of parliament and our legislatures and our councillors here present, the leadership of the ANC, the alliance, and different political parties, the representatives of the Young Lions and the leadership of the ANC Youth League and the former leadership of the ANC Youth League, senior government leaders, DGs who are here, heads of departments, members of the media, attending here today in honor of our DG, Thabo Masebe. Since Monday evening, the 18th of April, there's been an outpouring of condolences, tributes, and many testimonies about the phenomenal and fulfilling life of Thabo Masebe. We are gathered here, convened today by the family. We are here to say our acting DG and chief public servant, the master communicator and the editor-in-chief is no more. It is indeed an honor to speak on behalf of government about this special type of public servant, a true Mandarin who distinguished himself in the service of his nation and its young democracy. Thabo Masebe's presence enriched and improved government's work. It enhanced the quality of governance and service delivery. But his sudden and unexpected departure leaves us grief-stricken. And many have said this. We are heartbroken. He leaves a big gap in government and in the ANC for the work that still needs to be done. because we need good people in government. We need good people in the ANC. We need people with integrity and skills. We need people with commitment. We have been saying, as a manner of speaking to the family, that we share this pain with you. But if truth be told, it is more difficult for you. Because to you, Thabo was both a pillar of strength to the elders in the family, but a great inspiration to the young ones, to younger generations in the family. But we also know that to his children, to Chami and Masebe, it is more difficult for you. You have been very brave this week, and you are very brave today to pay tribute to your dad. Thabo was a pivot around which family festivities and activities revolved. His siblings said so today. Bamsanda Buchirapara said something about Thabo Tlo Yehulu Ndokulu. And he said, that great elephant has fallen. I would like to borrow from our mother, great struggle veteran, and now our ancestor, Maya Angelou, when she wrote a poem about when great trees fall, and the poem goes, when great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. The lions hunker in tall grass, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in the forests, small things recoil into silence, and their senses eroded beyond fear. And when great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, and sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with hurtful clarity. We have seen friends, comrades, members of the family's eyes this whole week, swelling with hurtful clarity, unending tears. That is when great souls die and when great trees fall. Bamsanda, I want to say, even as Maya Angelou says, even the elephants hunker for clarity and the lions run when great trees fall. So Thabo Masebe was a great tree. Ambassador Jerindo earlier in the week paying tribute to Thabo made reference to the baobab tree. And indeed, that is the great tree. So our nation today mourns the fall of this great tree and the death of a great soul. As we do so, let us keep the entire family in our thoughts and in our prayers, so that in time they too can find peace and heal. But what is it about Thabo's greatness that we must discover? In the entire week and earlier today, We were indeed hearing stories about Thabo's greatness and the many dimensions of that greatness. And Thabo's greatness was not in the noise of his voice or his pomposity or big-headedness. All that he did not have. But it was in his quietness and comfort with working in the background to ensure that things get done. And sometimes to ensure that others take credit for those things that get done. And many a times, people who are appearing on platforms like today would say the things that Thabo wanted said without saying it is by him. And I'm one of those. There are many a times that Thabo got me to say things as if those are my things. And he never took credit. As Rens Mabote said on Thursday in this same hall during the ANC memorial service, Thabo's greatness was his humility and his humanity. That's a deadly combination. His humility and his humanity. And may I add, that there was more combined with that humanity and humility that I'll talk about today. So, we are today here to express our gratitude to the family and to Thabo's boys. To this family, to the Masebe family, re re huba famadi. We thank you for giving birth and for nurturing, for planting, for nurturing, and for growing this great tree. We hope its incredible and indelible legacy of tireless involvement in the struggle to better the lives of others and in pursuit of our nation's democratic, transformative, and emancipatory agenda, the family will find solace. When you hear the stories you have heard in the entire week, we hope that will help the family to find peace. But we know healing is also a journey. We who encountered Thabo know that he brought really the best traditions of the liberation struggle into his government work. And I really mean the best traditions of the liberation struggle in the sense that Reverend Chikane was talking about, in the sense that President Mtlante was talking about, in the sense that the Young Lions and the leadership of the Youth League was talking about. He also brought the best from the traditions of the liberation movement in his relationship with the media. He was no threat to the media. He did not see the media as an enemy. He was always truthful, always humble, hardworking, ethical to the core. And Thabo was bloody competent, but slow. Anyone who has worked with Thabo, I don't know what your experience is, boys. He took time. And sometimes we have many people in government and in the ANC who think doing things fast necessarily mean delivering results. Now, I know this thing called big and fast results from, is it Malaysia? But Thabo was bloody slow. you give him anything, you know when it is done, it shall be perfect. But you must have patience. And that's Thabo. He placed the interests of the people above everything else. And this is what made the ANC great. Now, I might sound like Donald Trump, but this is really, really so truthfulness, humility, hard work, integrity, ethics, and assigning people tasks based on their competence and preparation. And above all, putting everything, putting the people, the interests of the people above everything else. That's one thing you would never be wrong about Thabo. So it may take time. So you're working on a speech. He may bring it 2 days later. Very close to deliver. But one thing for sure, you know that everything, there's no hidden agenda in Thabo. There was no malice. So Thabo's greatness also lied in understanding why the media is so critical in a democracy and why government communication is so important that the government can't blame the media for bad publicity. The government must be organized, Madiba, to tell its own story. But Thabo also understood that it serves a democracy for government and the media to have a sound relationship so that we can have an informed citizenry and an active citizenry, and government can be held accountable. Thabo understood that. That was his partnership with the media. But Masebe's greatness also lied in his deep understanding of ANC policy and his ability to explain things in very simple terms. His greatness was also his intellectual stamina to debate everything and everything for long hours. If you didn't have time, don't start a debate with Thabo. For long hours. The guys in the media know to explain things slowly and take time and engage with everything, including those deadly opposed to his views. But his greatness also lied in maintaining a very healthy relationship. If you disagree today, or you have had a very heated, in the nature of politics, a very heated argument and discussion with Thabo. Tomorrow is tomorrow. It is done. He bared no grudges. In his standard approach, he eschewed empty phrase mongering and slogans. So he will, if you throw something that does not make sense, he will say, so, okay, so what does that mean, Premier? How are we going to explain what you are saying? So first explain it to me, because I must go and explain it. He eschewed rhetoric, just throwing stuff there without thinking about what it really means. He was slow. And his greatness lied in his simplicity and clarity of thought, particularly in public discourse and in political communication. So in typical Masebe style, if you can't explain it to a young child, you don't know what you are talking about. He set a gold standard for many young government communicators, that you must always be truthful and factual. You must be transparent and proactive, especially when you work with the media. So He believed in what the Chinese say, that you must always seek truth from the facts. And Thabo demonstrated impeccable integrity, particularly in a world characterized by so-called alternative truths. There was only one truth for Thabo. If you have messed up, you have messed up. And you must own up. He is not going to do the work of spinning and explaining the inexplicable. Inexplicable. So if you can't pronounce it with Thabo, why should he pronounce it? And why do you write it if you can't? If you have the numbers that are too long there, why don't you write them in words? So don't write 1 million there, which you can't read. You must write it 1 million. But Thabo was also a man of structure, process, and method. He was very structured. I don't know what the experience is as the family. He didn't just do things spontaneously. He was very structured, and he was very organized and consistent in asking the same questions. Every time we had to write a speech or write a statement or write a policy document, there were 5 questions that Thabo will ask. You know, when you prepare the first draft that's going to be edited, there are many, there are speech writers here and communicators. The first draft. So Thabo is going to ask always these questions. What are you trying to communicate, and who are you communicating to? So what are the key messages? The communicators will say. So if you're not clear what the key messages are, don't even start. When the key messages are clear, you can now discuss the speech, and you have to debate the key messages. Is that really what you want to say? And then you would say, so what is the theme? But are all these things that are in here truthful and factual? Can they be verified? Are there also people other than you who can confirm that these things you are saying are true? They are not only in your head. And perhaps most importantly, does this message deal with the fundamental issues of concern to the people? Because communication must always be about the people, and policy must always be about the people. That's the 4th thing he would ask. And lastly, how are we going to enlist other stakeholders? Thabo was a bloody good stakeholder manager. And many were managed without knowing that they are being managed. How are we going to mobilize others around this? So when you have answered what are the key messages, what is the theme, when you have answered all those, is this factual and truthful? Does this address the fundamental issues? You must look for the stakeholders. So who else should we mobilize? He was a very good organizer. Who else should we enlist to this? Before you even speak, before you even issue a statement, who else should be mobilized? So Thabo's greatness was in his discipline and his method, in dealing with government communication and dealing with government administration and policy. But the man was slow, as I said. And you have to just come to accept. So DG, when can we get that? And I must report to Thabo, before Easter, he said to me, Premier, I'll give this to you after Easter. And when he passed on, he was working on something that he wanted to give to me after Easter. And it has to do with the appointment, a process of the appointment of a head of Department of Health. And I must say, Thabo, we got that work, all that work done. So even as he was sitting, as Florence called me at home, as he was sitting on his chair peacefully, but his work was done. The file was ready, and that HOD of health was appointed this week during the period of mourning. And he had said to me, I'll bring you this file, Premier, immediately after Easter. And it was done. So we are very grateful to the Masebe family. But there's something about Thabo and communication. He was a professorial enigma to young communicators. He is a professorial, and I mean, but by this I mean, everything he said to these young communicators in government, they did, and it worked for them. And the government communicators in our province loved DG Masebe, and they respected him enormously. The media has already spoken for itself. They had a very good and sound relationship with him. But Masebe was not just a communicator. He was a true Mandarin. And somebody who made a great contribution in practice to what is truly a special type of public servant in practice. And I would like to say that I have dreamed a few times about the day that Thabo will be able to join the National School of Government to go and train government communicators and civil servants generally nationwide on the art of communication and building strong and sound relations with the media, but just also on how just to be a good public servant. And he left us before he could do something so profound, because the National School of Government is very important for our democracy. It's very important for our government. We need the training of our public servants. We need the training of public officials. We must go to school. Ministers, MECs, Premier, we must go to school. Mayors, councillors, it must be permanent. And that's the mark of a true cadre. President Klante spoke about that. So Thabo also understood the teething problems of government regarding lack of implementation and the pathologies of administration, such as problems of incompetence, corruption, and just failure to follow up on things that have been announced. One thing about him is that he worked in Gauteng with Premier Shilowa, went to work at national government with President Klante, worked at Tuli House with President Mbeki. Thabo knew the ins and outs. Thabo was a very good storyteller. So for every policy, he knew when did it start. President Mbeki said this about this, and then this was introduced. In the province, it's the same. This premier, this was introduced. He was a walking archive. Every government policy. The good thing, though, he would say, if we want to change because this has not worked, we just need to know why did it not work before we introduce. Because sometimes we know in government, ANC people like to introduce new things. It's almost like fashionable. You must always introduce new things without even an evaluation of the others. So Thabo was very careful, but he was very respectful. He'll talk to you very nicely when he thinks, no, you don't understand that issue. And I always, there are MECs here, I always, and DG Baleni, and senior managers in my office, I always insisted that I need to hear Thabo. He wouldn't raise a hand. I always insisted, I need to hear what Thabo is going to say. And when he says that he'd take long and give a story, he was getting old. He was becoming a very good storyteller. And many a times he'll start with the story of President Ntlante. You know, President Ntlante has told us this story, we were traveling. But he wants to tell his own story. And you could hear that he's aging. Every discussion he starts with a story. And you know it's going to be long. So, many a times he would say to me, Premier, these people, I don't know why they are getting such a simple thing wrong. What are they trying to do which will discredit this government? So when you discuss with him, DG, there's this thing going sort of, he comes and says, Premier, these people, you know when Thabo says these people, you must just know that those people are on his wrong side. And wrong side in terms of doing the right things and doing things right. So we are eternally grateful to the Masebe family for this emblematic figure in our administration, in government, and in our country. There are many things where you can see Thabo's mark in our initiatives in Gauteng, Ntirisano program. Thabo gave this community outreach program the name. Now, so it's called Ntirisano. So it's like Imbizo, Community Outreach Program. And it is Thabo who named it Ntirisano. So work together. Today I understood. So Thabo has got some lineage in understanding the language. Abshe in Bagaina. Now I understand why he had such fluency of. He's got the roots there. He was part of many developments of new ideas, including how to make sense of those. The open tender system. These ideas will start somewhere else. The township economic development, it will start somewhere else. But Thabo will get us to make this clear and address his 5 questions. So we can communicate these ideas. But he was also part of managing difficult issues in our province. And as the obituary says, life as a demanding tragedy, the PPE corruption. He was very central on how these things must be dealt with a great deal of honesty and truthfulness and a great deal of empathy. Let's face the problem when there is a problem. Let's not dodge it. So his greatness was really that he was forthright and really firm in pointing out malafide motives. Thabo was a very reluctant administrator. He loved just staying in the communication. And I came to understand, why is he so reluctant with administration, acting DG, and said, no, you know, Premier, I have a mistrust of the bureaucracy and civil servants. They are always up to something. He had this, he says, mistrust. So, if I'm in charge of the administration, I'm likely to sign a document that puts me in trouble. Because someone down there had hatched out a plan and make it appear nice and then brought it to me to sign, and I must take accountability when I've signed it. Those are some of the pathologies of administration and government, which he was very keen to sort them out. So our acting DG, master communicator and editor-in-chief is gone. But Thabo was not just a civil servant. Many speakers have said, like James A. Baldwin argues, he was a man of his time, circumstance, history, and that's what made him, but he was more than that. And all of us are more than that. So he was shaped by that generation of young lions and the youth leaguers who fought ferocious battles. He was a student activist who rose to the highest ranks of Azaso, Psycho, and the Youth League. and Jerindo, Lulu Johnson, Malusi Gigaba, and Phoebe Potgieter today and earlier in the week testified about how dependable and trusted Thabo was. Amongst the death defiers, the young lions. I met Thabo at Tefluop. And what was he doing there? He was going around helping students who needed a bursary from the EAP with Reverend Ngomani. And I must say today to the Masebe family and to the youth leaders and the young lions, I was one of the beneficiaries when I was at Tefluop of Thabo's bursary. Because you are talking about these people he helped. Thabo always wants evidence. Where are they? You say, I helped them. Where are they? Why don't they tell the story themselves? I am one of them. I was a student activist there. And he did many. He was going around doing that. Joe Matebula would testify to this. So I would like to conclude by saying, in Thabo we had a true cadre. The public service has lost a dedicated cadre of a special type of a public servant. And I know sometimes, even in the ANC, this word cadre is a swear word. And we want to accept that, no, cadre is wrong. No. A cadre and a public service, this gets used in the army, it gets used in the police, in other systems, it gets used in the civil service. A cadre is not someone given a job they can't do because they know nothing about, because they were appointed, because they know somebody. That's not a cadre. A cadre is someone properly prepared with very specific skills, equipped, and given assigned responsibilities until they are equal to that task where they are deployed. There must always be preparation. There must always, yes, some of it is specialized training depending on where you are going to be deployed. If you are in the police, you can't have somebody at the next rank when they've not been prepared for that rank. So this thing called cadre deployment, which is being discredited, is actually cadre misdeployment. It's the misdeploy, and that thing called cadre is it's the corruption of the word cadre. It's not a swear word. A cadre is always about somebody equipped, prepared, trained, experienced, and assigned the task that they are equal to. So that is a cadre. Thabo, I'm using the word cadre today. I've tried to explain it here. You must be satisfied. And in the last stanza of The Great Tree Has Fallen, she says, when great souls die after a period of peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses are restored, never to be the same. Whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. We are better people because Thabo existed. We emerged from the dark ages of apartheid because Thabo existed. And we can be better. Our country can even be better. We can be better people ourselves. Our movement can be better. And trust among citizens and government can be restored. Peace, social justice, and genuine equality can be achieved. Corruption can be ended. A better future for our children and an economy that serves the interest of all can be built. May the period of peace and healing and renewal bloom in the family of Masebe. Farewell, DG. You have run your race. Robala ka kgotso, Glow, big tree, a great soul. Re a leboga. Nah.
Re a leboga mo premier ka mantswe a kgothatso. Ke nagana jwale se re fihlile mosebetsing wa rona, re tlo kapa lesolo la rona go ya leetong la bofelo, mme ke tlo etsa ka tsela e tjena. Ke tlo bitsa all the pallbearers from the state SAPS to come forward and take their position, followed by the bearers from the South African Police Service also to come
Warrant Officer Sebui. Warrant Officer Ndungwa. Warrant Officer Charlie. And Warrant Officer Nsimama. Bearers, take your positions. Our four bearers will be Brigadier Litoniani,